Okay, let's bring this meeting to order. I'd like to apologize on behalf of the board. We had some closed session business.
When you finish recording, you may hang up or...
We had some closed session business that took a bit longer than we anticipated. So we apologize and thank you for waiting, for all of you that stood it out. Did anybody leave? No? Oh, good. Okay, Jeannie, would you lead us in the flag salute, please?
Please join me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much.
Every day.
And report out of closed session.
Okay, on item A, Alex motioned and Paula seconded to approve the classified leave of absence by a vote of 5-0. On another classified leave of absence, Alex motioned and Jeannie seconded to deny the classified leave of absence by a vote of 5-0. Item B, Alex motioned and Diane seconded to reinstate the student for the 22-23 school year. In case number 2021-22-2 by a vote of 5-0. Item C, Alex motioned and Paula seconded to revoke the stipulated agreement for case number 2021-22-4 by a vote of 5-0. Item D, Alex motioned and Diane seconded to approve the stipulated agreement for case number 2021-22-8 by a vote of 5-0. Item E, Jeannie and motioned and Diane seconded to approve the stipulated agreement for case number 2021-22-9 by a vote of 5-0. Item F, no action was taken. Item G, the interdistrict transfer requests were approved by a motion from Alex and a second from Diane and a vote of 5-0.
Thank you very much. And we have some informational reports. P2 attendance report.
So that was attached in the packet. A summary, our overall attendance for 21-22 was at about 81.84% ADA, with 1,468 students. The solution that the state is planning to provide is still undecided for this school year, but it's expected to be either a hold harmless or adjusted amount based on an average from previous 3 years, unless I'm speaking out or making out if you've heard anything different.
I have not heard anything yet.
So that it will likely be one of those solutions. We're just not sure which one yet because the legislature will continue to issue trailer bills probably into July. So.
And we still have a lot of COVID absences because they have it. It might be only a sniffle, but if they have it,
They have to be out.
5 days, it's a whole week. That's a lot of absences.
It really was this year. And this is not unusual in speaking with other superintendents. They saw similar absence issues as well.
Okay. Facilities assessment report.
So Rochelle, I'm not sure if you've made our presenter a co-host so that he can share his screen.
He doesn't have that setting, so no. But I can pull it up.
Okay.
Superintendent Aldridge, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Ryan. Thank you. And
Okay.
Rochelle will share her screen so that, and just let her know when you need a slide to advance.
Okay. Great. All right, well, good evening, everybody. My name is Ryan Hahn, and I am a consultant, a principal consultant and owner of Strategic School Consultants. And I work primarily on the West Coast, Washington, Oregon, and California, working with public and private and independent school systems on school operations related assessments, concerns, plans of action, and with Willits in particular, we were contracted to come and work through a facilities assessment and analysis. And I'm pleased pleased to share that we spent during 2 different site visits, several different days, each visit on campus, myself and one of my colleagues who is also a sitting director of safety and security in a very large district, who works with me on various projects. And I would like to start this presentation by saying that we were very grateful for the opportunity to come work with Willits. We were greeted very kindly by building staff. They were very pleased to see us. You have amazing teachers, you have amazing classified staff who work hard, and those staff members out in the buildings were incredibly gracious and were very much a part of the information that we gathered that I'm going to share with you today. So we can go ahead and whenever we're ready, go on to the next slide. So this is a large presentation. We're not going to cover everything bullet by bullet, but I took nearly 1,000 pictures while I was on site. And the district will get all of that in a digital appendice, as well as a technical report referencing to many of the statements made in this presentation tonight. So this is going to be an overview. We're going to go through what the facilities assessment consisted of. We were there in February and again in late March. We're going to talk about findings by school briefly, findings in the overall maintenance department, funding district and district support, your current bond measure, recommendations, and one of the things that was a goal about this assessment is that wanted a standardized set of measurements in the area of your facilities to build a strong facilities master plan. And you're going to be able to take this information and go forward and do that. Next slide. So this is just a basic general overview of your district, roughly 1,500 students. You are in Mendocino County, 315 square mile geographic footprint, rather large. Beautiful area, by the way. Loved heading up to the Sherwood School. It's a gorgeous drive. You use a maintenance, operations, and transportation management set up in your maintenance department. Next slide. These are your school buildings. You know which ones they are: Brookside, Gloucester, Sherwood. And I have a tough time with this one. Is it Bechtel Grove? Correct? Okay. Willits High School, San Adrian High School, the alternative school. Next slide. So this is a snapshot in time of your district facilities. We are obviously a neutral third party. We do not know anybody there. We're not from there. And we just go in and we create basically a hyper-focused Williams Act facilities assessment using the Williams Act tool. So if you're not familiar with that, the facilities inspection tool, it's online. Your buildings are inspected, and that is turned into Mendocino County, who keeps a record of those. And you go through things to a certain level of finite degree to find out where, on a regular basis, it's intended to provide a snapshot in time as well of where you're at with your facilities and how to prioritize maintenance requests and such as the district moves forward. We conducted interviews with the maintenance and operations transportation director and several staff in that department, as well as outside of that department, district administrators and teachers. Interestingly enough, at Willits High School, teachers came up to us, and so did staff, to have discussions. And as we traveled to the different schools, people, like I said, were very gracious, very accommodating, and also were interested in talking to us because, as you will find, there was, each building has several different needs, so to speak, on either deferred or deferred maintenance or things that were need to be repaired. And so we're going to kind of cover that as we go through. But this analysis also evaluates the flow of information, processes, and how that interacts with an educational institution to provide service for students and staff. Next slide. So we're going to start with Willits High School. The FIT score, or the Facilities Inspection Score, was good in October of 2021. That's the last inspection. It's a sliding scale, and 92.51 is a good score. In the report, we will have those FIT reports as an appendice for you to read, as well as it gives the criteria. Next slide. So a couple things that I want to talk about at Willits High School. We spent the majority of our time there. It is an old school. It is used a lot by the community, and it also had the most need for obvious repairs. So some things that were concerning to us, and like I said at the very beginning, this is these kinds of concerns in our experience are based upon when we see things to this level, which there are a lot of issues here. It usually has to do with resources and time. Those two things, and how the maintenance department allocates those two things to prioritize repairs. So restrooms were locked with padlocks, and we actually had to use bolt cutters on some of those to get in because we were not given access. They had functioning plumbing and fixtures. Exposed electrical wires in the weight room, large holes in the walls, outdoor electrical conduit missing or exposed, classroom door windows cracked with tape on it, exposed electrical wires in the girls' locker room, broken cabinets in the art room causing safety issues for students and staff, urinals and toilets out of order in some restrooms. The main building flooring just replaced is buckling at a transition and causing a trip hazard, and that was listed in Measure I's Phase 1 bond report. Next slide. You've got trees growing against the building. Whenever we do the facilities assessment, we always remind everybody, look up, look in the gutters. You know, you've got critters and things living in your gutters and growing out the gutters. It rains a lot there. Lots of debris. Mold and holes in the walls upstairs in the main building where students were present. Extension cords, thermostats, with exposed wire connectors in many rooms on campus. Exposed electrical wires, like I said, in the girls' locker room. And we had, in particular, I wanted to speak to, sorry, there was a duplicated bullet there. Aren't you? In the main building, we understand the main building at the high school is the oldest part of that building. But there were several areas where when we interviewed staff that taught in that part of the building, they were concerned that their maintenance requests were not followed up on, and they showed me, and we spent a length of time in there where there was broken items that students would use every day that could pose a threat, like whether it would be opening cabinets or just wires hanging down and above where students were learning, those types of things. Next slide. Evidence of flooring and rotten entry door in the art room, sort of flooding. Inadequate drainage near the steps outside the art room. Serious wall and fixture damage in the boys' locker room. Lack of access with the master key in many areas of campus. That was a huge safety concern of ours. The principal did not have keys. And we had to get somebody else who works in the maintenance department to go around with us to unlock things with several different keys. We couldn't get it in many areas. And as a general rule, things are always tied to a grand master so that if there is a safety or a security threat in the building, people can get around it and maneuver through and make sure things are safe and people have access. Like we said, there are use of padlocks on doors. We saw that in several different cases on restrooms, and especially at this school. And overall poor workmanship with HVAC installs. Some of these things are part of the bond measure. Missing trim and finish work in the office and in classrooms. So we noticed that things just weren't quite finished. So, you know, the things were hovering like at an 80% ratio to where things were completed. Next slide. So we also wanted to touch on school safety and security when we were there, and I brought an expert in that field with me. So lots of unsafe storage of equipment and supplies in the boiler room under the main building, inoperable intrusion alarm systems. Campus is not secure, lacks a secure entry point. Visitors can access campus without going to the office. Camera systems are operable but limited and don't capture all areas of campus, although major improvements have been made in that area, particularly on that campus. Electric access control to doors is non-existent and keys are not distributed appropriately. Campus is littered with many slip, trip, and fall concerns around campus, uneven walk areas, old pipes. They're in kind of the courtyard area. There's several different areas of different concrete and tree or maybe tree roots that damage those things. And if you access towards the back out by the fields, you'll see the same kinds of things, that there's construction debris and things being built, and there's no safety cones or anything to keep people from falling on posts or tripping or those kinds of things as well. Next slide. We'll move to the middle school. So your middle school, I have to tell you that your janitorial team and your custodial team is phenomenal at this school. Very much a lot of pride found in everything that they were doing. We were able to interview the night custodian. We went there after school was out. And this school scored a 95.57, and you'll notice that that's not all that different than the score that it was at the high school. So we're going to go through the list of deficiencies and things that we saw in this school, but I'd already mentioned when I debriefed with the superintendent, this school was in the best condition. When we came and did our snapshot in time analysis. Next slide. So several classrooms and restroom faucets were inoperable. Trees growing too close to the building, allowing access for rodents and pests, and staining in several ceilings indicative of leaks prior to the roof replacement. So ceiling tiles were not changed or painted inside. Next slide. Inoperable intrusion alarm system. Campus is not secure. You don't access at a secure entry point. Visitors can access without going to the office. Even though they're directed, they can bypass. Camera systems are operable but limited on this campus, and there is no electronic access control on all outer-facing doors. This campus is kind of it's a breezeway campus, some of it, so that's open around, which makes it difficult to kind of keep people from wandering around on that campus. And we'll talk about it a little more when we go to Gloucester, because actually that school has a lot of gates, locking gates on it, and that's something that we would consider that you'd want to start implementing over at the middle school. Next slide. Sherwood School. There is no fit inspection on the school. Report turned into Mendocino County or given to us on our visit. Quaint little school, wonderful staff. It must be an amazing experience to be taught out of that school building. It's just like going back in time, driving up in there, and it was really neat to get to see this campus. So under general maintenance on the next slide, rodents and skunks are accessing the crawl spaces due to the lack of adequate benching and/or skirting around those portable classroom buildings and the old main classroom buildings. So we actually saw them scurry under there when we were coming, and it stunk. And so I know there's not a lot of covered space for them out there, but they need to find somewhere else, not under the school building. Broken and unsafe playground equipment that was not cordoned off. The swing set had an end of it that was falling down. And all door locks must be operational and able to be locked from the interior. We did not find that. Portion of the boys' bathroom was blocked off and non-operational. Soft flooring in the old schoolhouse. Plants and vegetation growing up the back porch of the old schoolhouse, broken window screens. Now, I do want to tell you, I gave Superintendent Aldridge a report when we first came. I went back to the school on my second visit, and many of these items were repaired, which is a good thing. But I don't know how long they had been broken or why it needed to be brought up by a third party to repair. There were so many things. It wasn't like some little thing happened and then somebody wrote it up. It was quite a bit of repair that was needed, but a lot of these things were rectified. Next slide. Inoperable alarm system. Again, if it is not secure with a secure entry point, visitors can access campus without going to the office. You can just walk around. Lacks a functioning camera system like the rest of the buildings. Electronic access is non-existent in that building. And there are window coverings and interior door locks that are not adequate in case of a lockdown, and to make sure that you can perform that properly. Next. Gloucester Elementary. In the district office, you'll notice the fit score was around the same as the high school's fit score, which we'll talk about why I'm bringing these up. Next. So, walked into many rooms. This is actually a beautiful campus. But it was amazing to me. I was walking into classroom after classroom with sinks with standing water in them. Dirty, icky water. Water fountains inoperable in rooms. Student restroom stalls need locks. They weren't repaired. Classroom door closing mechanisms were not functioning and slamming. And those are little kids on that campus. We like to see a soft close mechanism. The HVAC in the kitchen and cafeteria is and was inoperable that time, and the staff had the kitchen ovens open, heating the building, which is not advisable. Ceiling staining evident in all buildings prior to some roof work being done, and graffiti reported several times left on a portable in the back of campus near the superintendent's office on that wing back there, and it was still there while we were there. Next slide. This building also has an inoperable intrusion alarm. It is not secure. Gates were left open, both on the backside by the district office. We could walk freely, and the big green gates were open in many places. Visitors can access campus without going to the office, even though they do have a locking gate system. Cameras are installed. Electric access to doors is non-existent, and keys are not distributed appropriately at this campus either. I did notice some scanners on those, but nobody had a card to scan in. Window coverings and interior door locks, there were issues with adequacy there. And the open gate from the district office was concerning because we did see people coming in and out of the backside of campus. Next slide. Brookside Elementary. This has a much lower fit score, and I know that many folks are aware of the needs at Brookside because they've been listed and were part of creating Longmeadow High. So all call systems were inoperable in all areas. No ADA access to the playground areas. Access to crawl spaces were open and should be sealed with vents or skirting to prevent rodents and pest infestations. Some restrooms were non-operational. Room 21 had friable asbestos with exposed and missing 9x9 tiles under rugs. Students and staff were in close proximity, and the library has 9x9 missing tiles that were also loose. Friable asbestos was present in there. Ramps to portables rusted and exhibit trip hazards. We noticed that was in the bond material. This particular issue was in the bond materials to help float the bond, to educate people. The West Wing classrooms has closed classrooms that are uninhabitable. There are evidence of rodents, as well as even collapsing floors in the West Wing. Storage room in the West Wing has evidence of rodent exposure and is uninhabitable. There's an inoperable freezer located in the classroom ring. which takes up quite a bit of space, and kitchen floors are uneven and need new flooring as they pose a trip hazard. When we found the asbestos in several things, I immediately alerted the superintendent, who moved students away from that. As far as safety and security goes, inoperable intrusion alarm. Campus is not secure. There is a central door to come into that campus. However, there is another agency that has a building in the back of that campus, and so we noticed people who did not come in through the front. And there's a gate between the west wing and the main wing that people can access as well. Camera systems were partially installed. Electronic access was not in existence. Keys were not distributed appropriately. We could not get to several places in this building as well with the master key. Window coverings were an issue in some of the older buildings. They were hanging and not blocking appropriately. And some of those classrooms have a wall of windows facing the playground. And yeah, next slide. Except for the side. Sanhedrin High School, no fit inspection on this school was turned in. We did notice, we did not find any deficiencies in this building, other than I know that they're planning on doing some roofing replacement, and we read and researched that in some of the bond measure information. I will tell you that this building was locked, and somebody met me at the door. The teacher in the first classroom met me in the door, asked me who I was, and wouldn't let me in until they verified who I was. We're very appreciative of that. They did a good job. But there still is, camera systems need to be upgraded. Campus is secure and has an single secure entry point in the front. The back door was locked. And debris and outdoor storage of equipment poses a liability. There are a lot of things around that building in the back that should be cleaned up and done. So the maintenance department findings as a whole. This particular maintenance department is provided, leadership is provided by a Director of Maintenance, Operation, and Transportation. They do have a working portal-based work order management system, which is important. We did receive copies of those. We did look to see the latency on repair time. We did look to see duplication of efforts of staff, whether or not there was good communication back and forth between maintenance in operations and building staff and administrators. We do find that overall the quality of the workmanship is not industrial grade. If you had a licensed contractor following you around and you viewed other schools, it is not to the level in which things are done in other professional educational settings. The department has a poor reputation in the district in relation to communication and the ability to solve problems. This is concerning because when issues were reported, and we did meet with some teachers at the high school, padlocks would show up on areas to restrict access if people would complain. There was bathrooms in a portable building back towards the wood shop that had those on it. Particularly relating to restrooms were causing working condition concerns for staff, and they shared those with us. The department, in terms of its communication and its ability to utilize the resources that it's been given, and yes, the district is providing adequate resources in terms of the minimum. It goes above and beyond the minimum, but they're not distributed consistently across the buildings because unless it's related to a bond measure where somebody is building a plan and relating that plan directly to the use of taxpayer money and has to report that through a bond oversight committee, the general maintenance funds aren't like that. They're up to the discretion of the Director of Maintenance, Operations, and Transportation to move around to buildings as they see fit. And we've definitely noticed that Willits High School desperately needed repairs. And there were other buildings that had repairs tidied up to a good amount, like the middle school. So we noticed that there was not an adequate or a way to kind of quantify how maintenance was distributing the resources that they are given. Because of that, relationships are strained, and buildings with concerns around the latency of repairs were more likely to have restricted access to areas that students and staff need. In particular, that bathroom issue at the high school. And there's other examples that will be listed in the report as well on that. FIT reports do not adequately tell the story of how maintenance is deferred or not tended to in the buildings. So you'll notice how close those FIT report scores are. And if you, as just you may not be in the construction field or maintenance field, you may be in a completely different field. You will notice the difference in our findings, and just with your own eyes as you walk around the building, that those FIT reports are incredibly subjective. And we're going to talk about that in steps forward and how we need to tighten that up so that to where there's consistency in creating those FIT reports. The prior, oh, sorry.
Did we tell him? Probably not. What's the chance in that? What's the protocol? Okay.
Somebody needs to be muted.
I would think that the first.
Sorry, are we still going?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. So the prioritization of large capital repairs over day-to-day repairs, I do feel like the maintenance department, when they are given a big project or a bond or something, they are taking care of the big things. They are putting roofs on, they are putting windows in, but it's the day-to-day upkeep and how that equates to the student experience in the building is considerably lacking. Communication between staff and maintenance on deferred or pending repairs is poor at best. We do see duplication of repairs orders in there, and then notes from maintenance saying that this is the same thing, this one's been deleted. And customer service is lacking across the district, and staff interviewed indicated that they're giving up trying to report unsafe or broken items to the maintenance department. Next slide. So this just gives you a brief overview. We're not going to cruise through this, but the district does meet and exceed the 3% contribution of routine restricted maintenance as a total of general fund expenditures. COVID funds have been largely prioritized to help move along some of the deferred maintenance, especially with windows and various HVAC projects and things in the district. So the district is prioritizing funds to help improve facilities. Next slide. Measure I, really quickly, just wanted you to, as you kind of read through this assessment, just wanted you to compare it to things that are going on with phase one. So you can see the different things that are being done, whether they're roofs or backup power in the kitchen at Gloucester or heating units. It's just good to have a comparative so you know kind of what's in the wings to be done. Just because this is a snapshot in time doesn't mean there aren't things being planned to be done, but it's a good way to differentiate between things that are budgeted. And when I got a budget from the Maintenance and Operations Transportation Director, he gave me a list of items that were unbudgeted, that weren't slated to be fixed. And then I pulled up Measure I's phases and could kind of compare. But the things that he gave me that were unbudgeted were still in need of repair. So next slide. These are things that are coming in measures 2 through 4 as part of the current measure. Next slide. So recommendations. This really has to do with leadership and implementing communication protocols and subsequent processes in the maintenance department to improve communication. You have hardworking classified staff in that department. You don't always have enough, because when I interviewed the maintenance director, he said that it hasn't always been staffed, and everybody's having a hard time finding staff, and we totally understand that. But the communication in and out makes all the difference from the stakeholders and the end users in that. There's a need to define roles within the maintenance and custodial personnel and assign equitable levels of work to each employee. Obviously, we want to remove all those padlocks, open all those restrooms to students and staff in each building so they're not walking clear across campus to utilize the facilities. Build a short and long-term maintenance plan to include day-to-day upkeep, not just budgeted items, but things that the maintenance department needs to be advocating for and informing the superintendent's office that need to be repaired. And make immediate repairs to safety and or other items that do not align with the district's mission and vision of educating students. There is direct research and evidence between the correlation of highly functioning and clean and presentable buildings to student achievement. And it's really important that people who are working in the support roles also are aligning themselves with what, it's not just how do we get this done today, it's how do we do this for kids, right? These are community-owned business, they're buildings, they're funded by taxpayers, and how do we make this the best experience it can be for our customers, our students, and our parents at Willits Unified. Next slide. So prioritizing campus safety and security is a big number one, and I actually saw that on your agenda for tonight. Repair the intrusion alarms. You need to know when people are getting into things, and if there's people defacing property or breaking in or accessing the building without proper authority, you need to know it. Create secure entry points at all campuses. Implement electronic control access around the district with key cards. Rekey all the district locks to the building with the general master key that every administrator holds. It's super critical for a student safety. If there's a crisis or an emergency, people cannot be waiting to access buildings or get students inside for safety purposes. And complete more regular fit reports with district office leadership. So there needs to be more oversight, direct oversight to ensure that we're documenting adequate progress on a quarterly basis of items that are showing up on those facility inspection tool reports. And provide professional leadership training to the maintenance department, establish customer service metrics, and restore broken or poor relationships. And you might want to consider some reorganization of the maintenance department too, which we talked about in our report. So building a facilities master plan, this may not be new to some of you. I think some of you have been through the process of getting the bond measure off and running. And CASBO has a great program. I have been through the Chief Business Official program and very familiar with it. And so we're kind of tailoring the results of this analysis to help you with your next steps of building that. We already have a good master deferred list and analysis findings with this report. And then it just goes into involving stakeholders and the board to prioritize facilities needs next, knowing what you have now and where you want to go. And then those are always aligned with both facilities and educational goals through the local control accountability plan, LCAP, and the district strategic plan and goals. Provide an analysis of funding on how those things would work in tandem to get there. And then keep the deferred maintenance listing on a regular basis updated. You have to know where you're at all the time and have good information coming and going for maintenance. So that was a lot. And I would certainly like to entertain any questions if you have any at this time.
Board, do we have any questions?
I'm good. I'm going to wait for the detailed report.
Great. And Mr. Aldridge, do you have anything to add to that?
I do not. As Ryan had mentioned, there are some things that there's been progress on since the snapshot in time. At this point, I don't have a comprehensive list of what those are, but there have been some progress made. We are installing flooring, for example, to encapsulate the 9x9 tiles that we mentioned in room 21 in the library and any other room that has any tiles of that type.
Thank you very much, Ryan, and well done. Thank you very much.
Yeah, appreciate your time on that, and I do appreciate the, in closing, this is a public session meeting, I do want to reiterate, especially to the hardworking people in your school district, I have never met, I get around to a lot of places. I have never met more committed educators in those buildings. I mean, who would do anything for kids? It's pretty amazing. So you've got a good thing going there, and I really appreciate the opportunity to work with you on this.
Thank you very much, and that's very true. We get the opportunity to work with those people every day. Thank you. Okay, next agenda item, WTA comments.
Good evening. This is the board meeting where we get to say goodbye to you. And it's the board meeting where you get to say goodbye to me as president of WTA as well. So in the last couple of years, I've had 2 superintendents to work with, a huge learning curve to deal with, and I feel really happy that my primary goal of building bridges instead of walls between the district office and the school board and each of the sites and each of the unions. I've seen a lot of growth in that, and we are collaborating to the point that even having the strategic schools report is a result of our collaboration together. So there is progress in that. We've had shelter in place. We had to reinvent education to serve our students. We've been able to work on a safe work environment for the students and the staff. Everything from air purifiers, and I've learned way more about HVAC systems than I ever thought I would have to know about, to all the PPE that we had to get in place so that we could reopen our schools. We did that. We did that together, and that was really commendable. We've got one-to-one Chromebooks for 3rd through 12th grade. That's happened in the last couple of years. We had fires, PPOs, planned power outages, the evacuation. Was anybody here evacuated? Yeah. Lived at the school for a week. That was really interesting. All of this has been going on with COVID. Oh, and Snowmageddon. We had Snowmageddon too. Just snowstorms like nobody's business. We came out of it on top of everything because we stayed a team and communicated and collaborated. And this is what we're going to do going forward too. We kept the schools open all but one day. Is that correct, Mr. Aldridge? We used one holiday, and so technically, two?
Well, all schools. There was one school that was
Hugely commendable, given that we had 25 to 65% absences of staff and faculty or unfilled positions. What we have done in the last couple of years is pretty impressive. I'm so happy to see this EL program coordinator on the agenda for tonight. That's something else that we've been really working hard to get an EL program back in place. We've got a book room being built at Blosser. Our bond money has been doing improvements like the roof at Blosser, the playground at Brookside. And we want a playground like that at Blosser, please. Parking lot at the high school, and we've been working on the safety of the schools. This report will help us. We've had concerns about fire and lockdown safety. So that's something else that our union has been working really hard to get improved for our students. Brendan Ludwig is the president-elect for WTA. But that doesn't mean Brian Bowles isn't going to be active in doing things with the union, just in another capacity, just to let you know. Willits educators, as he said, we are very committed, and we will do anything to make Willits a shining city on the hill where people want to live and work and raise their children and get a great education. Thank you so much, board. It has been such an honor to work with you. I will continue to work with you going forward in different union capacities, but we got it. We got it happening. We're making it happen in Willits.
Well, you know, that was a beautiful way to end the year, so thank you for that.
We're grateful for Joe as well.
Yes.
This has been a great year working with you, and we really appreciate you.
Yes.
Thank you.
So sad to say goodbye.
Yeah.
He seems like
He's not that far away.
CSCA comments. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone.
Okay.
The summer program this year's off to a good start. Very understaffed in all aspects. I think food services is about the best staff there is because it's all combined in one area. Custodial maintenance, again, understaffed, but we're doing along, getting everything we can. There's not a lot other than that. We do have, the one issue is our latest MOU with the $100 per day stipend. I hope that we can talk and revisit that somehow. There's some issues between folks about that, so if we can do something about that, that'd be great. Thank Joe for your time, appreciate it. And I met Mark, got it right, I met Mark today, so we'll be up here next week and we'll see each other tomorrow.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you very much. Okay, board comments. Let's start all the way over there at the end of the table.
It has been an interesting year. Graduation was fun to watch, short and sweet. Certainly enjoyed that. We graduated 120. Is that right? 70 and 50. And so that was nice to see. Jeannie and I participated in the CSBA's regional meeting today, talking about the budget that the state's pushing through. There have been some interesting developments along there, but there's a lot of trailer bills that have to go in along with to follow the adoption of the budget. It's still a lot of stuff is up in the air, as Nikki, I'm sure, is going to tell us, but I'm not going to steal her thunder. So beyond that, that's all I got.
Thank you, Jeannie.
Hi, everybody. I really appreciate all that the staff has done this year to get us back into regular schooling for our students. I know it's taken a huge effort, and we do have a wonderful staff at Willits Unified, not only teaching staff, but our classified, and everybody works really hard. And it's one of the, I'm very endeared to Mendocino County and to Willits Unified School District. I taught here for 20 years, and I raised a son here and put him through school here, and now I have grandkids in the school, and I see really good, wonderful things happening. So I have been involved in the level book room at Blosser, and it's been a real pleasure to see the coordination between Brookside and Blosser, and to make sure that the level book room happens, and that it happens in the right kind of way, so that it's utilized in the school district. And like Alex said, I've been trying to participate in CSBA trainings and CSBA meetings that are available online, because I really learn a tremendous amount. I participated in the webinar for the May Revise in whenever that was, and I admit to myself and everybody else that school budgets are not my easy part, point in my life, but I'm trying very hard to understand things. And then I participate in the CSBA quarterly meetings, the Regional 1 quarterly meetings. And I also wanted to commend the staff for all that they're doing to improve literacy among kids and to close the learning gap and to bring kids up. In my own family, I see the efforts that everybody's making. My granddaughter's the youngest one in her classroom, and she has struggled with reading, even though she's very bright. And I see the effort that her regular teacher takes, that the aides take, that Ms. Johnson takes, that everybody, and I'm just using my granddaughter as an example, but everybody is making real great efforts to bring up kids' scores and to help them close that learning gap. So anyway, that's about it from me. Thank you.
Diane.
Yeah, end of the year. I attended the FFA end of the year banquet, and it was in the show barn my first time being there. And Kelly Brackett was there, and I also want to thank Becky Bowles for also being one of the teachers with these kids. And we had the reports, the awards for the retired officials, student officials, and the new elected officers. And we learned that the FFA has a clap instead of an applause, just one. And that was fun through the whole thing. And the parents were there and families. And we went through interviews with superintendents on the 14th, 20th, and June 1st. And on June 7th, Tuesday, was election day, and I'm an official for that for Mendocino elections. So at 12:30, I went over to the awards ceremony over with at Sanhedrin, and with Joe and Jeannie there. It was nice to see all these their instructors, Jesse Reese, John Horton, and Julia Ritchie. And it was nice. For the master's ceremony was Marion. Wednesday was Bechtel Grove's graduation. It was great being on the Willits High School field again for graduations and seeing families and relatives, friends in attendance. And thank you, Maria, for your efforts at Bechtel Grove School, and all the teachers that were there that night. I did not attend the Willits High School graduation on Thursday because my granddaughter graduated from kindergarten. And thank you all teachers. You put in so much effort this year, more than, to do what you did this year. And summer's here for your 1 week or 2 weeks before you get back to it again. Okay.
Yeah, Paul.
Okay, well, you just said almost everything I would have said, except that at Sanhedrin I did not go to their awards assembly. Instead, I went to their adult school graduation, and that was really nifty. We even had a mother-son combo pack that went in and graduated, and yes, tons of people were there. It was a big deal. And they had more graduates than they had last year, so that was really exciting. And John Horton runs all of that, which is really good. And there's talk that next year's adult school will include more than it has included in the past, which would be really nice. Then I really think that Brian Bowles did really well on the Peace Garden fence. And also, you know, I'm not often one to do a lot of kudos. It's real easy for me to just expect that things should be correct, and then the stuff that's wrong, you're not supposed to allow to continue. So those I comment on, but this time, I must say that Mike Colvig did an outstanding job. I truly believe, absolutely outstanding, in dealing with the senior prank. And those of you who know about the senior prank, it's amazing that you know, because the kids went in, did what they did, he went right behind them, cleaned it all up, and the next day life was still normal, which is a whole lot better than this, according to my opinion, since I know there are people who don't agree with me. It's much better that your pranks are not that noticed, otherwise all the classified and half the certificated staff have to deal with whatever they left behind. Anyway, I really thought also that the documentation for the facilities, and especially this report, was a really good one. I'm really glad we finally got that aired, so to speak. And, but don't think it's wonderful because we really lack custodians. That's a real big deal, and certainly maintenance. Ground still has about the same people, but they don't have the same level of skills that they had. A lot of our classified programs, classified employees in programs, really could use some more people. And because our budget's been kind of fortunate, it would be nice if we could make a really serious effort at advertising and hiring the people that come to respond to the advertisements, and then make sure that their pay scale is given. I'm especially happy to hear that there will be some modifications to the MOE with the classified staff, because that had some holes in it that we discussed last time. Anyway, sort of lastly, although it is one thing I don't want to forget, thank you, Joe, for two things, and then I'm done. One of them is the $17.50 bonus that you set up and everyone agreed to. Thank you, WTA and CSEA, because that was a really big deal. And from all the people I've checked with throughout our county, we did the best, you know. So that's a big deal, because we're not always at the top of the mark with money, or, I mean, it's easy to say, oh, thanks, you did a really good job, and there's not a grocery store in the county that will take that as payment for your basket of goodies, you know. So it was a really big deal. That's a big thank you. And the other part is that I'm sad, although not, I'm sure, Mark, you're gonna be outstanding, but Joe has done a really good job. And thank you very, very much. Oh, and then Maria too, but I don't see her, but anyway.
She's online. She had to be at a professional development thing that she had.
I'm here.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, good. I just thought that, you know, you're leaving the position at Bechtel Grove. You did real well too. So it's nice. You already know what I think. So that's that. Okay, and that's that.
And it's all been said, but I did get an opportunity to go to the adult school graduation and the middle school and high school graduation. And I tell you that those graduations are so special, especially the high school one, because all the hard work that we put in, the staff, the parents, the community, all of that just shines during that graduation time. And it always warms my heart that we're doing a good job, because you see those kids, and most, if not all those kids, are gonna go out and they're gonna do something special. And they're great kids, and I work with them through swimming, and so I get to know a lot of the kids, and the salutatorian and valedictorian. They're both two of my swimmers, but it's just exciting to see all the work and everything that's done in this district come to light when they graduate. It is so exciting, and it always just warms my heart. But other than that, I think we need to move this along. Superintendent comments.
All right, I'll be very brief because I think everyone said everything that I could say. I do appreciate all the work and support that we've had from all of our staff throughout this whole year. It's been a very challenging year for everyone. I appreciate the board's support, and it's been a pleasure to work here. We do have one more meeting on Tuesday, but I anticipate that'll probably be very short in comparison. I really appreciated being able to participate in the various graduation ceremonies, all the way from kindergarten graduation all the way up. It's wonderful to see the spectrum of all the success that our students have. In light of facilities, as Dan had said, they're really working hard for summer. We do have some shortcomings in staffing, but the list of items needing attention is very long. They're working very hard to address those concerns, and will be outlined. We've talked about the items outlined in the facilities assessment report. We'll be working on some ways to address those as well. As far as our summer programs, just an update on enrollment. K-5, we have 123 students for BGM, and K-5 was all combined, so that's why they're kind of all reported together. BGMS has 88 students enrolled. Willits High School has 43 students enrolled, and Sanhedrin 15 students. So we're serving quite a number of our students through our summer programs as well. And that's for the current session. There's also a session at the end of summer that'll be sort of a ramp up to school for a couple of weeks for students. And so I would anticipate similar numbers. That'll be K-8. So I would anticipate them having similar numbers as they ask that they enroll in both sessions, but we might pick up some additional students at that time as well. We'll hear from fiscal services as we hear our draft budget later on, and we talked a little bit, we touched briefly on Director DL programs position that we'll consider as well. That's all for now. Thank you.
Thank Okay, so now it's time for public comments for items that are not on the agenda. So it is not comment on items that are on the agenda, it's anything that is not on the agenda. And you may not get much response from board because, quite honestly, since it wasn't agendized, we can't move on anything that may be brought forward that we didn't know about. So there will be no motion or action taken by board members. That doesn't mean we're not interested, it just means it wasn't agendized to address. So any public comments for items not on the agenda item? Please come on up, come on up. Please,
Thank you.
Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Jim Robertson, this is my wife Terry.
Very nice to meet you,
We're
very
neighbors.
nice to meet you.
We're neighbors at Brookside School, and we have a complaint. We thought we were on the agenda, but that's a more difficult issue, I think, maybe than we understood. We sent a letter. Did you receive it?
Yes.
Okay, so
yes,
you've
thank
seen
you
this,
very much.
and it's a complaint about a storage building. I'll make this short. We invite you to please come and look at the building, come to our house. I'll buy you a beer. It's big, and it's blue, and it's right across our fence, and it is a relatively, in our opinion, low-budget item. I have experience with these metal buildings. This one went up in 2 days. That's after the pad was poured, and you know it would probably take 2 days to take it down and 2 days to put it back up on a new site. Okay, I actually helped build the hangar for Copter 101 up at Howard Forest Teletex. So and it's a very similar building, only bigger. At any rate, do you have any questions?
Any
We don't
questions?
have to
from
make
the
this
board?
long. Well, and we really want to thank Teeny for helping us organize ourselves. In all fairness, Mr. Albright told us no. That's why we're here to ask you to reconsider this. Okay.
Well, very much, and you presented yourself so well. Thank you so much. And we most definitely will consider your request.
Thank you very much.
So
Thank
I
you.
just wanted to say that I after talking to the Robinsons, I went and looked at the building and from the Brooksides, you know, so I have a real idea of how big the building is. And if I was a neighbor, I wouldn't be happy either, so.
So is that the issue, that it blocks your view?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't receive your letter, so I don't know what we're
It-
talking
it-
about.
Copy of the pictures, do they have?
I might send it.
Yeah, it's a bit of an eyesore from your viewpoint.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. It's-
But it's on Brookside's campus.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Right
It
by there.
intrudes on their view.
Yeah. And my address is on there, my phone number's on there. Please come by and look at it. Appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
thank you very much. Any other public comment for items not on the agenda?
Good evening. For those of you that don't know me, which I don't know this is anybody, my name is Brian Mann. I'm assistant football coach here at Willits High School. One of the greatest honors and privileges of my life has been to be able to work with these young people, and I don't plan on going anywhere anytime soon. But I did want to take this opportunity to say goodbye and to thank Joe for all the hard work and kindness and support he has extended to our team during his short time here. Truly, Fort Bragg's game is our loss. We're going to be very sorry to see you go. I came to him this year. I'm the designee on the team to go to the district office when we have a need or an issue. And I've come to him with several very difficult issues this year, and he has never put me off, never made me feel like our request wasn't important, and he's met all the needs of these student athletes in an incredible, incredible amount of effort on his part. And we want you to know, Joe, that we appreciate that. Your time with us has been short, but your work here will never be forgotten by this coaching staff, and we have a little memoir We want you to remember your time here at Willits fondly, and Coach Norbury wasn't able to be with me tonight, but he does have one request that he wanted me to convey to you. If you would just hang this up in your new office. Joe, it's been an absolute privilege. Thank you so much. Our new superintendent, I met him this evening. We look forward to working with you. Thank you also to our board and all you do to support our student athletes.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I have no doubt there are still things that Joe can do from Fort Bragg to help us.
Okay, is there any public comment on the consent agenda items? Any public comment on the consent? That would be items B 1 through 10.
Yeah, I just had a question. I wanted more clarification on the reasoning for your waiver for the 51222, the letter F. What the, like, an explanation on what that means.
Oh, we'll get to that.
This, yeah,
Oh,
we're
consent
on
agenda.
B 1 through 10.
Sorry, I'm
We'll
down
get
at the
there,
bottom.
We'll get there.
Okay, I'm at F. Okay, I'll wait.
Any comments on consent agenda items, letter B, 1 through 10? Not hearing any. Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
Second.
Okay, discussion amongst the board members? Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. It passes. Approval of employment agreement for district superintendent 3-year contract. Is there any public comment on item C?
How many years was that? Okay, just making sure.
Does anyone have any dirt on item C? Just kidding, do not respond to that. Okay, no public comment. Do I have a motion for approval?
I move that we approve the contract for Superintendent Levy for 3 years.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion?
I just wanted to welcome Mark Beebe and say that I'm really looking forward to working with him. So I think he's going to be a wonderful superintendent.
As am I.
Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Now you're done. Mark, your interview was great, without going into detail. You had a great interview. We heard a lot of things that we really liked. Your references were wonderful. They were glowing from what I understand. Would you like to share a little bit about yourself?
First of all, do we stand up? Do we sit here?
Yeah, why don't you come up here? Come up here.
Get you in front of the camera.
Just give the public a little bit of insight of where you come from and what you're about. You don't have to do anything big, long.
First of all, thank you. I'm very humbled for this opportunity. Thank you to the board. Thank you to the community that was here, new friends that I've made, and certainly everybody that I've met since I've been here in Willits Unified. Everybody's just been extraordinarily kind and nice, very helpful, bringing me up to speed. A very opportunistic meeting with Joe based upon a WASP visit has led me to here. And so I want to say thank you to Joe for all of his information and open door policy about giving me as much information as possible. I heard a lot tonight about where you have been and what you have been going through. And I've been in a few systems in my time, and a little bit of an educational gypsy. And I would love for this to be my last job, my last place to spend my time educationally. Everybody's done an amazing job. What we've done in the last 2.5 years is nothing short of phenomenal. Whether it be classified, certificated, parents, students especially, community members, everybody in our world and our sphere has just done an amazing job of coming together, rallying up, figuring this out. And we still have a long ways to go. We're not out of the woods yet in terms of getting back to the new normal. I place an enormous amount of faith in collaboration, consensus building, capacity building. I'm a huge believer in teamwork. We've got to be able to do this together, all of us, whether it be the person mowing the grass to the person teaching AP Physics. We're all in this together, and we need to continue to build that teamwork. And it sounds like that foundation is here, and I'm excited about that. I'm excited about that opportunity to lead that. I've already had a number of funny moments with the YTA folks. That's been great for me. I've met, Dan's not here anymore, but that's okay. So, for the most part, I am very visible, and I like to be at sites, and I like to be out and about, and I like to watch teachers do what they do. I like to see students do what they do. I like to see our classified staff do what they do. I like to see Rich do what he does. I just met him. So, and I like to see our front office staff do what they do. Again, everybody working together creates an amazingly beautiful product, and that's student achievement. And that's what I'm hoping to do, and that's what I'm hoping to lead. And that's kind of who I am.
Fantastic. Well, welcome aboard. We look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay, public hearing. 703.
Yeah.
Local control accountability plan.
There's public copies
This is
if
our
you want
public
to take a look at
hearing.
any. It was updated a little bit.
Yeah. And will receive input from public on matters pertaining to the adoption of the 21-22 LCAP. And at this time, the board welcomes public input. Do we have any public input out there? Not hearing any, we will be closing the public hearing.
Could I make just a few comments about
Please do.
what's in this
Please do.
76-page document that can be a little daunting at times? We kept in place many of the supports that we've had in the past, but we did add in, as we talked last time, about additional PE support. We were looking at bilingual aids for Brookside and Gloucester that are built into this plan. We have built in for EL program director, assuming that moves forward. If not, we'll make those changes before it gets approved, but we wanted to budget in that light. We are continuing our support for the school resource officer position that is there. I've spoken with the chief of the police department. He is still recruiting and will, just everything with COVID through everything further for him this year with things. We also, if you look in there, the amount, I wanted to address, just given our facilities report, it looks like we're decreasing the amount for maintenance, and technically in LCAP we have, but when we started looking at it out of supplemental and concentration, just doesn't make any sense in that particular situation. We're going to spend that out of general fund at this point because we're overcommitted in our supplemental and concentration to a point where it just made sense to move it where it's actually coming from, so we can reflect that accurately within the budget. We also, if you look through the plan, some of the metrics are not fully updated. They will be updated for the final approval that you have on the end of the week.
Okay. Any questions for Joe?
Yes. I'm not sure it's even appropriate to put it in LCAP, but in light of information that we've got about safety and security on our campuses, whether it be single points of entry or inoperable alarm systems or public address systems and so forth, should that not be considered in LCAP?
It certainly could be. I think that we're overcommitted in the funds that are in LCAP. This is not the plan of everything that we do. This is just in what leads to serving our students and their academic needs in the most concise manner. I would think that's probably most appropriate in, say, a facilities master plan. That will be the next step, and identifying the funding sources. LCAP may eventually come into that. We can always come back and modify LCAP if we need to with the board once we've decided that that's a priority and that's where you'd like to go with that.
Could we also get that into the individual school site plans as they maybe do a quick self-assessment. They know where they're vulnerable at now, I would imagine.
Yes, I believe so. That's definitely part of the school site plan and the safety
Right,
plan
safety issue, right.
process with their school site councils.
Well, the concern I have about that is a master plan is still a ways off. I would argue that the safety issues that we're talking about, not necessarily single points of entry, because that would be very costly to implement, but in terms of our alarm systems and things like that, public address systems, to me, that's low-hanging fruit that should be dealt with immediately. And quite frankly, I'm uncomfortable with people being on our campuses without us having the ability to be able to say we have a significant issue, a safety issue that people need to understand about right now so they can take appropriate action. Also things like internal door locks. There's been too much tragedy in the news. I don't even want to talk about that kind of stuff. It still boils down to is it's one of the most terrifying things for me as a board member that we have campuses that might be vulnerable, and it puts our staff and our students vulnerable. And I can't imagine how much worse it would be for us if something happened here and we hadn't taken steps to address those issues. So
I would say yes, that we can include that. We haven't currently budgeted in that regard, and with the uncertainties with what's actually going to follow through in the budget, there are some one-time funds that I think might be appropriate to dedicate toward school safety measures as well. I just don't know what those amounts will be at this point as to the scope that we could certainly anticipate with that funding. So I hesitate to say.
So I don't know where the rest of the board will fit with this, but from my perspective, when it comes down to safety issues, this is one place where there is absolutely no doubt in my mind. This is one place where I believe almost all of the people that we serve would be willing to dip into our reserves to whatever extent is necessary to make sure people are safe on our campuses.
Thank you.
So, I'm not concerned about where the money comes from. That's not entirely the case. I'd far rather use one-time monies that don't impact our budget per se, but still, if necessary, we need to look at other funding mechanisms to get those things done.
Joe, do you know that, so the assessment that Ryan did on some of those, the school safety component, do they have like worked up cost estimates related to those items?
Not at this time, and that's the.
So is that something that they do, or that's something they pass off and then we take that piece on and start building that out?
I think that we would take that piece on and build that out at this point.
I agree.
Thank you. Any other questions for Joe?
Nope.
Please.
I'm real concerned with all the chunks for bilingual ed, and I'm especially, or not bilingual ed, I'm sorry, language acquisition for limited English speakers. And okay, so I looked at this a long while back, and now I just skimmed through this, and yeah, I must have missed in my quick perusing of where it is in here that there will be a director or a coordinator or whatever for
Item 214.
214. Oh, it's at the bottom of, oh, okay, I see this. Well, then that's good, but the only other part that okay, and this is the salary and benefits?
Yes.
Okay, well, I'd like that to be open to discussion. And I'd also like to see, instead of just bilingual aides, which you've got a couple in one spot and a couple in another and a couple in another, that we make sure we have at least one bilingual resource teacher and a couple of aides or something very similar to that. I've watched these programs come and go for 40 years, and what really bothers me is we're back at the spot where I started, okay? And sadly, they didn't have a specific director for language acquisition or English language learners. But all the rest of it is certainly the very same, and I do not believe we are ever, and I know our teachers in this district are outstanding, But to say, here, I think you also ought to make sure you dedicate at least 30 minutes of your day to this cluster of kids that are gonna need additional support, I just don't believe that that ever happens. I mean, it does, it does sorta, it does not do it in a concentrated effort, and always something else comes up and just completely erases that brilliant lesson plan or plan for the rest of the students. And I know it's, I'm not really saying it to you, but I really do think it needs to be somehow engraved in blood or something. Sorry. Okay, that we just write it seriously somewhere in this plan.
So at this point, I would say that that's probably a decision, that's why I think that there needs to be a director of English learner programs to make those decisions about what's the appropriate way to move forward to best serve our students and bring that back forward as that funding becomes available. We've got some options in that. I know that that was discussed in part of the EL committees as well, and was the current best practice is that pull-out ELD is not necessarily the best service model in that. So,
Yeah. But for a push-in, I really do think that it's gonna take more than a couple of aides and a director, because when the director, or whatever that title ends up being, gets involved, it's super broad, and you have to coordinate it with everyone. And I did notice that there are professional development classes and things set up, but I just get real concerned that if we don't at least have a few teachers in this district that look like role models and have the skills required, we are doing 30% of our population a major disservice.
The other question I was gonna ask is, I didn't see any specific references to universal pre-K in LCAP.
there's not, it's just a program in general in the district. It's not necessarily an LCAP program, it's a part of our full funding. We don't necessarily enumerate every single program in this document at this time.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
And we vote on this at the next board
Correct.
meeting?
Yes.
On the 21st, right?
Yeah, so if there's other feedback that you have, I'm hoping to have the final draft by Friday, so, but not that it can't be changed until the 21st.
Oh, yeah, no, it's.
Okay. See no other discussion. Public hearing at, what do I have, 7:13 for the 2021-22 budget.
You guys keep trying to send me up there.
The Board of Trustees of the Willits Unified School District will receive input from the public. Any input from the public on the budget? Nikki, would you like to speak to this?
Okay, so there are two documents that have been distributed, and for those who are following along online, they are attachments on the agenda as well. One is a packet that has all of the funds, so it has the general fund all the way through child development, food service, etc. The other document is the multi-year projection for the general fund. So this is the document that I'll probably spend the most time with here. As Alex mentioned, the state budget development this year has been a wild ride, a real moving target, to be honest. Even our agencies who provide direction and guidance for budget development have, I think, struggled to reach consensus on providing specific direction on which COLAs to use and all of these things. And there's been discussion about potentially having some one-time discretionary funds, etc. So I wanted to let everyone know kind of where we landed for this particular budget development. I think it will be very surprising if we don't end up having to do the 45-day revision this summer, because I expect that what has been adopted will be different than what we had to use as assumptions here. We were getting a really wide range specifically for next year in terms of what COLA to use. So we saw anywhere from 6% up to 15%. We want to be as realistic as we can. We want to be able to make good plans if we're going to get funded for something, but we also do not want to like way overextend ourselves and have that funding not materialize. So I tried to go with a good moderate approach to this. It looks like there's one of the items that has been mentioned is a possibility of doing some adjustments to the LCFF base funding. And so I went with a combination of assuming that to be something that may happen along with, I think it was 6.5% or so COLA. So the total impact of that is equivalent to just shy of 10% is the COLA that we're using, because it was 9 point something. So that's for the 22-23 school year. Now, the school services dartboard was using some higher figures for the 23-24 and 24-25 years. I want to say in the range of anywhere between 5 and 7%. But that was based on the May revise, and things have already changed very quickly. I'm concerned because I feel like we are starting to hear a lot more discussion around the potential for recession again. And so those higher numbers seem very chancy to me to be really counting on right now. So I did use a more conservative figure for the 2 out years. I used the COLAs that were being discussed around the January proposal, which were more in the neighborhood of 3%. So I just want to be very clear that's what is included. Currently, there are no one-time discretionary funds included. So if that piece does get approved, and I apologize, some of this may have been approved, but I have been absolutely buried in this, so I have not come up for air in the last 2 days to see what is currently being set at the state level. But if the one-time discretionary funds do come through, that would be something we would add in. They're not currently included here. We have identified various things in the LCAP that are some additional positions. So all of those things that have been discussed, those salaries and benefits are represented here, beginning with 22-23 and moving out through 24-25. Obviously, a huge factor for our budget is the one-time COVID funds, right? We've been kind of looking now through that for a couple of years. We've had various deadlines for the expenditure of those funds. The sort of latest deadlines for that, or expenditure deadlines, really kind of max out mostly for the end of the 23-24 year. So we see a very big shift when you look between 23-24 and 24-25 when it comes to the revenue, because that's where those one-time funds begin to drop off. One of our biggest kind of initiatives that we had done was the ELO grant, which was the first ELO. And we essentially adopted a plan that had roughly $1 million worth of items. That included our reading program that we're trying to implement. We got partway there this last year. We're now fully realizing that with having all 5 of the FTE that were identified in that plan fully up and running for 22-23. Lots of items in that package. And what we tried to do was maximize our ability to sustain those initiatives by rolling it forward across a few funding sources for 3 years. So for 21-22, we had the ELO funding. Those things will be funded primarily out of the ESSER 2 funding in 22-23, and then primarily out of ESSER 3 in 23-24. In addition, the ESSER 3 has the Windows project that we've discussed at which school site, Joe? Brookside, thank you. So that is factored in here as well. What I think is important for everyone to know about what is included and what is not included is everything that was in those plans and the additional FTEs, I have left on the books all the way out through all 3 years, okay? So you'll see that that stays pretty consistent across all 3 years. I did take out some of the service-based items that were in those plans. So for that 24-25 year where we no longer have the funding source, I did take out there was quite a bit of extra professional development funding from the one-time funds. We had the NYCP contract built into the ELO plan, so I showed that coming out. So anything that was not a positional type item, I do show coming out of the budget for 24-25, but I left all the positions in place. We have quite a lot of our aid time is currently funded with our COVID funding. So, you know, typically we would not find it ideal to use one-time funds for positions because that's an ongoing expense. With the volume of COVID funding that was directed towards schools, we tried to be as strategic as possible. We certainly identified many one-time expenditures over this last several years, you know, HVAC, various things that had to happen to be functional during the COVID environment. But we also tried to really think about impact to student learning and how we could support those things. And so we tried to be strategic. That does mean that in a couple of years, we're gonna have to really be thinking about how then we sustain those things in the longer term. And so what really is showing up here in the multi-year projection is that for that third year, we, you know, have to take a big hit in the reserves in order to keep all of those things going. So I just, you know, it's the third year out. I know that we're not married to those things, but it's just something I really want us to have on our radar in the next couple of years because we'll have to be thinking about what does that look like. Trying to think a couple other things that you guys may be particularly interested in. STRS and PERS over the last several years have obviously been a continuous issue. I was really hoping to see some more relief from the state, and it doesn't seem that that is their current focus, unfortunately. But the good news is that we do seem to be kind of at a pause at the moment. So the current projections for STRS is no increase, so across these 3 years. And then for PERS, it's relatively flat. There's almost like a tiny drop. It's like 0.17% or something like that. And that's going from 22-23 into 23-24. From this year into next year, there's an increase, but then moving out through the multi-year, those stay relatively flat. That is beneficial for us in terms of planning. It makes it a little easier to not be constantly having to absorb those increases year after year after year. I've tried to be mindful, you know, in removing any expenditures using one-time funds. So we've got things like the book room that are being implemented, other, you know, purchases that have happened. Special Ed had some COVID funding for their learning recovery. So I've tried to kind of track that throughout this budget and not leave extraneous things in as we move forward as the funding sources tied to them expire. One area that I look forward to seeing how it looks is the food service funding. So as you all know, we're in the CEP program. Not all districts had chosen yet to go in that direction, and the state has put in place some legislation that will require districts to provide free meals to students. And in doing so, they have decided to provide some funding to school districts to help defray some of those expenses. And so we're already up and running with that program. We are going into a new application year, so you know, we'll be doing some additional applications and paperwork related to that this year, but it doesn't create a large change for us operationally, but I am hoping to potentially see some new revenue coming in. It's hard to know right now what that's going to look like. So I was very conservative in terms of how much revenue I show coming in related to that new funding source, but that'll be something we'll keep our eyes on as we move forward. In addition, we have some one-time funding that has come in related to food service, so we'll be working with Christy to get some things implemented. We got funding dedicated to equipment purchase, as well as some training specific for food service departments. So those, are listed here as expenditures, but there's no particular items yet identified. The other area where we do have some undesignated expense listed in the budget is related to the ELO program. So this is not the one I was talking about before, the ELOG. This is the new ELOP. So this is the one where the state is requiring us to expand the instructional time, have a longer summer program available, longer school day, things like that. So we have received funding, I think it's around $350,000 that we have received for that. That's gonna be covering our summer school salaries and benefits, some of our transportation, administrative expenses related, some materials and supplies. That still leaves a piece of that funding unspoken for based on what I know that we have planned. So I am anticipating as we move forward, the administration will probably, kind of build out a little bit on what we'll be doing with those programs. It's very new and the state kind of just threw this at us last minute. So we're still figuring that out. So the expense is listed here, but it's available for the program to be developed. The other thing about that is that the state technically provided those as one-time funds for this first time, but they're very, they don't seem to have any hesitation in talking about it in an ongoing fashion. It seems that they are intending to fund that ongoing. So for right now, I've used that same revenue amount on an annual basis here for this plan. So that may change. We don't know yet what that funding will look like. And then the last program I wanted to touch on was the pre-K. You even brought that up. We did receive some implementation funding for that. I've been working with Kathy, and I think she has a pretty good sense of what she's going to be doing with that budget. They've got some supplies they need, some furniture that they'll need to get those classrooms set up and ready to go. That funding is one-time and is being used on one-time expenses. But one thing that we did do is start looking at our enrollment and ADA projections and thinking about how that might grow a bit as we bring on this new demographic of students into the LCFF calculation. So we did factor in some growth across those couple of years with the anticipation of having a few more students coming in for the TK classes.
Didn't the TK not count towards ADA for a while?
So it had to do with where the students were in their birthday. So there was like students you could claim once they hit a certain age.
Until they get their 5th birthday.
Yeah, and you could still serve the students within a certain range, but you couldn't claim the funding until they hit that birthday. So they've now expanded, right, where we can claim them, and so the expectation is that we will be able to incorporate them into the LCFF calculation. So.
And the other ongoing expense that we're putting into that initial planning grant was to pay for the aides that will be serving in those classrooms until the ADA starts to come in. So it'll be that kind of wait and see.
Jump started because we don't yet have revenue related to it. So yes, we've added 2 aides for that program. They're funded 50% out of these pre-K or TK funds, and then the rest is open so that they can be used in other ways. That looks like.
Do we have any hint how what kind of enrollment we'll have in pre-K?
So we're anticipating our current TK enrollment this year was between 25 and 30, and we're anticipating that next year will probably be in the mid-40s is what we're using, around 45 to 50. So we're anticipating that 2 classrooms with 2 aides should meet the staffing requirements that we have in place. It's always hard when they're coming up with a new program that's mandated, but we don't, and kindergarten TK enrollment's always one of those question marks. And some years we get big spikes, and other years we're pretty flat. So
what ratio did they finally hit on?
So they're for this coming year is a 12-to-1 ratio, adults to students. So the aides in the classroom count for that ratio as well.
Okay. Any other questions for Nikki?
I just have one from the cafeteria fund. In the past, we were running in the hole, so to speak, and then with the new changes from 3 years and 2 years ago, we were supposed to kind of get out of the hole, and I'm aware that we didn't, but can you explain to me why it is that there were other financing sources, interfund transfers of, you know, a couple $100,000 there when, you know, it covers what we were in the hole, but I mean, they already had additional funds budgeted.
So, just make sure we're looking at the same thing, so on transfers out from the general fund into the food service program, in
Right.
22-23, we have 280,000, and it goes up to 301 and 371. So, yes, you are correct that that is the contribution from our general fund into food service, so that's the shortfall of revenue in food service compared to the expenses. I did try and build in some CPI, inflation factors for the food expense because I anticipate that to be a problem here for the next couple of years. And then again, the unknown, so the uncertainty still around a lot of the factors in this program. Just the participation rates are really a moving target as we talked about, like all the absences and stuff, so that can have an impact on our revenue. It's difficult to do the budgeting. So, I would say based on the way that schools food services are funded, I would not ever necessarily expect us to be really like in a profit situation. We'll always probably have some contribution. Of course, you want that to be as low as possible. I would love to still see us make some progress with these amounts.
This is kind of what I'm asking, is that I know that when we were $80,000 in the hole, everyone said, oh gosh, we should only be 30. And then, I mean, I only see those numbers getting bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'm concerned with is the changes that were made apparently haven't affected this situation at all? Or
I'm
am I
not
mistaken?
sure if all of them have been implemented. Are you just talking about like the production?
Production, vehicles purchased, other equipment items purchased, all of these to bring down the.
So this year,
Contractual contracts with food suppliers, so forth.
right, so this year, the issue that we've really had has been around that each site was kind of running kind of endless brunch into lunch, and so just getting the food back and forth was not going to be conducive to that. So Chrissy's hoping to step up that production next year, where we'll be in a little more, where there's a brunch time and then there's a break where we can actually move food around. We couldn't do that this year because it was just, like say at Brookside, I think they started at 8:30 with brunches and it ran right into lunch, that then ran all the way till 1 in the afternoon, so.
But their kitchens weren't being used, and the whole idea, I understood at that time, was that there would be 2 district kitchens used instead of 4, and that there would be a scheduling issue, but it would get worked out so that the trucks and whatever else would all.
This year they did use their kitchens at those sites.
Okay, so that's what I wondered.
Yes, it wasn't, we just weren't able to operationalize that given the staffing that we had, or lack of staffing that we had in the situations. So it's unfortunate, but it was just one of those, when you added all those COVID factors in, we just said, we've got to feed the kids the best way we possibly can. So the intent is to use some of the equipment grant to be able to, I think that some of the equipment that was put into place maybe doesn't operate quite in the way that it was anticipated to operate.
Yeah.
So that we can maybe rectify that situation to make sure the kitchen's going to operate as functionally as possible. Also looking at refrigeration and storage at different sites to make sure that we have adequate refrigeration space so that we can have as much preloaded and ready to go for students.
Oh, okay, which would then make a refrigerator or a freezer or whatever a part of a maintenance budget, a part of a capital outlay budget, or a
It would
kitchen
be
budget?
a part of this kitchen equipment grant that we got. I think it was around $25,000, so that could address quite a few needs in different
Okay.
places or whatnot. So.
Thanks.
The other thing that I want to mention about this, one of the things that we have some some of our COVID funding dedicated to is offsetting our expense for food service. So that is in play for the 22-23 budget and the 23-24. So I have $50,000 each year going from COVID funds in for the food service. And then that goes away in that third year. So you can see there's like a steeper jump when you get to that third year because that COVID funding runs out.
Yeah, that's, okay.
And then there's also proposals on the table at the state level to increase some funding from the state to make up the gap in the difference. Because when we apply for the community eligibility provision, they pay for all of our students who would have been free and reduced lunch up to a certain point. Still leaves a gap between that and what we have to feed all students at that point. And so that gap is really what we're funding with this overage at this point.
Okay, and so the infant to 4 or 5, whatever, and some of the 17 and 18-year-olds didn't get additional funds?
We get some funding for them, but the CEP sets what level we get reimbursed at, so.
Meaning per meal, is that what the level
Correct,
is?
yeah,
Okay.
the per
That's
meal
what I
amount.
wasn't sure.
And so it affects those things in a way such that you have to hit a certain level of, the sweet spot is around 60 to 65% who are certified in a certain way.
Yeah.
Ours is a little below that, so that's that gap that we have to.
Oh, okay, that's where we got it. Okay, I didn't get the gap part. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So I had a question. Participating in the CSBA Region 1 meeting today, a lot was talked about with inflation. I mean, the food costs and the fuel costs alone, have eaten up. I'm sure the ending balance is as big as it would have been without inflation. And the numbers look big coming from the state that we're getting all this money, but when you factor in inflation and you factor in unfunded pensions, which I guess the feds are not going to cover anymore.
Yeah, they had been doing a couple like buy downs over the last few years where they were sort of like buying down the unfunded liability by some amount, which kept our percentages a little bit
Right.
lower, and they don't really seem to be taking that stance right now.
Right. Anyway, it's something to really be concerned with, and I know that you are.
Yeah, and just to give you guys a sense, so for 22-23, it was a little bit of a higher number for that, when I was looking at things like the food, the gas, that kind of stuff, supplies a little bit as well. Then the last rate that I had been able to find was using a CPI of 2.3% moving into those out years. So those were the percentages I used there. I hope that's enough. I hope that was conservative enough. I mean, I feel like every time I look, it changes.
Well, the point I think that Jeannie's trying to make is the fact that the inflation numbers, the money that's going to come in out of this budget year, CSBA is telling us it's going to be probably no less than 10%, and it could be as high as 15% in total, some of which will be made up with one-time funds, but a big chunk of it's going to be theoretically ongoing. The drawback to this, I should say, that looks really, really good initially. However, with our next contract negotiations, for example, we're going to need to find a way to make people whole after whatever inflation has done. That's going to have a massive impact on whatever that 10 to 15% is, because it's not just affecting our cost of transporting students and the cost of food that's coming into our food service and all the various other things. It's also going to affect salaries and benefits and in the long term.
Right, so this budget that we're looking at has incorporated all of the recently completed negotiations and all the public disclosures that we've looked at. So that's great, like we've got that all factored in, but you can see for 22-23, we're still in a deficit spending mode. I think it is a level to which for that I'm comfortable with. I don't think it is, out of proportion with how the budget should look, considering of all the programs that we've implemented and trying to sustain them. But yes, I mean, this is a 10% COLA, and we're already, at a point where we're in that deficit. So it goes quick when you have, those increases, and then the inflation expenses and the strict keepers, and it cuts into it really quickly.
Okay, any other questions for Nikki? Not hearing any. We'll go on to F, public hearing, 740, request of the California Department of Education to waive EC 51222A.
Can I give a little preface to this,
Please
just to
do.
hopefully address your concern before it's a concern? So this waiver for the PE minutes is literally only for our high school program, and the reason being, we provide the required number of minutes through our 2 trimesters that are provided. What we don't provide is every 10 days providing 400 minutes of PE through that, because they have a trimester where they don't participate. So what we're asking is to waive just very specifically that section, knowing that our students still get about 8,400 minutes of PE, which 8,000 sort of is the minimum that the state has set under this waiver for that. And we're requesting this is a part of our federal program monitoring, that this came up, that was even a deficit. I wasn't even aware. I thought we met the minutes, we're good to go. They said, no, you've got to also meet this other requirement of the law. So we're asking for the waiver in that situation to be able to keep the flexibility that the trimester system has provided, but also being able to provide our students with the minutes they need.
So what's the actual benefit to our students?
Go ahead.
So the benefit to students with this request is that allows them to still, if we require them to take, say, 3 trimesters of PE each year, that just eliminates one of their elective periods or a class that they can take. So it potentially could eliminate a pathway that they could be a part of, or just some of the A through G requirements, if they're college bound and maybe they can't take that wilderness class that they have wanted to take or whatnot. So we believe it's the best pathway that kind of addresses all of those concerns that are challenges for us in a small school district.
Okay. This is a public hearing. Do we have any public input? Come on up, please.
It's just a question.
Come on up, state your name.
Dawn McClellan, varsity girls
For the
basketball
record.
coach. My question was just that if they're a student athlete and they're playing a sport, does that mean they don't have to take a trimester of PE? Does it cover that?
So no, they clarified that for us as well, that unfortunately, unless it is their PE teacher or a certified PE teacher that's the coach for that it can't count for that. So that's an
Too bad
unfortunate
for them. Okay.
situation for our students in that regard. But we asked that question because we hoped that the answer was different than what they gave us, unfortunately.
Do we have any other public input?
Is
Not
this a-
hearing anything. This is not an action item, correct?
We do need an action on it actually,
It
so
is.
that I may make the application and we can get it on the July meeting.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Second?
I second.
Any discussion?
Sue, I have a question about this. In the event that we don't stay at trimesters, in the event that we go back to quarters, then how is this going to affect that?
So this is an annual certification.
Number of minutes? Oh, excuse me, yes.
This is an annual waiver that we would have to apply for.
Oh,
So it would
okay.
be under consideration every year. It's just the first year is a little more difficult. Each year after that is just a renewal
Yes
waiver.
or no?
So if you go back to a quarter system, then you're in compliance with the law at that point. And so the waiver's no longer needed, and it's not an issue.
Any more discussion?
Is there a chance it could be denied? I mean, what's the realistic?
I think it's a very small chance that it would be denied at this point. They grant this regularly to schools that are on a block schedule for the same reasons. And so I kind of looked at other waivers requests that have been out there, and this is following the same logic that has been approved before, so, I would think they would approve it.
Okay, any other discussion? Not hearing any? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, let's move on to H, approval of the 2021-22 declaration of need for fully qualified educators.
What
You
about
wanted-
G?
Oh, did I? Oh, excuse me. Getting ahead of myself. Approval, G, approval of WSD classified management, confidential classified, and unrepresented classified salary schedule.
So as we discussed last month with the public disclosure, that this just follows the same offer that we settled on with CSEA for the 3.5% increase and the increased health benefit costs.
Okay. Any public input on this item? Not hearing any. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the classified management, confidential classified, and unrepresented classified salary schedules.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
With this salary schedule, it's supposed to be connected to all the job descriptions, right, and the qualifications and the education levels and everything else that we do?
Yes.
Isn't that correct? Oh, okay, and so if they're an issue with, I mean, I don't see any apprentice wages on there, you know, like sometimes when you get someone who's taking a job, doesn't have whatever is required, but they're given an opportunity, so to speak. Do they just sit at salary step one for 2 or 3 or 4 or however many years, or does that have anything to do with it?
You know, Paula, I don't know that we've hired anyone who's not qualified for the position. It doesn't meet the qualifications within the job description, so that's not
Okay.
necessarily a bridge.
Ever a
that
question?
That we've crossed at this point.
That we,
So-
oh, okay.
Well, Paula does have a valid question, for example.
Yeah, I'm serious, I don't care.
We hired a principal that had not completed everything, so where would that person fit?
You know, it's rather mum on the point at this, you know, with these schedules or whatnot. My suggestion would be that, if that comes forward with the recommendation, perhaps looking at a salary schedule adjustment at that point that adds a column on, that sort of says, or adds a notation that says you'll stay at step one until qualifications are met or something to that effect, as is similar to what we do with,
They
say,
kind of do that to the teacher's
the teacher
salary,
salary schedule.
but it just never has shown up anywhere else, and it seems that teachers aren't the only ones that are hired without credentials or without whatever the qualifications require.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Not hearing? It is approved. Okay, now item H, approval of the 2021-22 declaration of need for fully qualified educators. Do you want to comment on this at all, Joe? know this is
I think this is a
something-
very routine qualification that we put out there. This allows us to we do our best to recruit, but then when we have to have some of our folks who are interns and say they're in their second year of internship and have been successful with us, we want to make sure to have this declaration in place so that they can continue that.
Great. Any public comment on this item?
Yes, actually, I do.
Come on up.
Okay. So, we have some interns, some PIPs, that have been with our district 2, 4, 6 years and don't hold credentials yet. Do we have a plan in place, a timeline? Like, if we hire somebody that does not have a credential, there should be a time frame in which they get that credential. We don't keep just passing.
Or to at least get in a program as well if they're that.
Yes. So basically, the way it works is that they could be on a provisional, the PIP, for 1 year. And then beyond that, you have to look at an intern program at that point and moving forward. The only situation where I could think that would change is if they change what credential is needed for what they're doing. And so
I think that's happening.
that's probably the situation that's led us to that situation. We're trying to step away from that as much as we can and support folks through the process to get their full credential.
Get her done.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other public input? Not seeing or hearing any. Do I have a motion to approve?
I move that we approve the 2021-2022 Declaration of Need for Fully Qualified Educators.
I'll second.
We have a first and second. Any discussion?
Can I ask a clarifying question, Joe? Should those be for the 22-23 school year?
Yes, they should, I'm sorry.
Do you wanna amend?
So we could amend the declaration of the paperwork attached is for the 22-23, the title just is the 21-22.
Okay, so do we need to redo the motion?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I move that we approve the 2022-2023 Declaration of Need for Highly Qualified Educators.
I will second that motion as amended.
Great. Any more discussion?
I am curious, do we have specific examples of people being here far longer than what we'd anticipated on a PIP?
Yes.
Yes.
Do we know of any specific reasons why that's occurred?
They didn't get into a program.
They needed to get into it or just haven't?
They haven't started. They didn't get into it their second year, and they're about to start their third.
Or more.
I guess my question was there reasonable attempts to get into these programs?
I don't know if we know that information.
Okay.
I think that may be an HR.
Yes, and
HR
I'll follow up
question.
with HR on that.
Yeah, I'd be interested in finding out more details on those. I mean, if these people are valuable employees, but they need a little more push to get to where they need to be, we need to find the way to motivate them.
Okay. Any other discussion? And did we do all in favor?
Not yet.
Okay, let's do it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yes.
One opposed.
She said yes.
I said, yes, I oppose.
Okay, and I'm going to amend item I as I read it. Approval of the 2022-2023 Annual Statement of Need, 30-day substitutes.
And this is again just that, yes, we need 30-day substitutes in our classrooms to be able to function. And it's not that they serve as 30 days, they're credentialed as 30-day subs.
Correct. Any public input? Not hearing that. Any? Do we have a motion for approval?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
Aye.
Okay, any discussion from the board?
I think it speaks for itself.
No discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? It passes. Item J, approval of resolution. Now, is this 22, 23, or
The resolution number, because it's happening in this year, would be
22?
the 21, 22, and for the 22, 23, because it's got to be.
For the 22, 23 school year. Okay. Okay, let me see if I got this right. Approval of resolution 2021/22-11 elementary assignments in 2022/2023. Okay.
And so what this resolution does is essentially allows us to have holders of multi-subject credentials work in our middle school where they're teaching core classes basically and just doing some switching in that regard. So it keeps us legal in that regard.
Any public input? Not seeing any. Do I have a motion to approve?
I move that we agree on the resolution of 2021-22-11 of the elementary assignments for 22-23.
Okay, we have a first. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
We have a first and second. Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it. Okay. Oh, excuse me, that was the resolution, wasn't it?
Yes, it's
Okay.
roll call.
Okay.
Yes.
Alex? Yes?
Yes?
Yes to Jeannie? Yes to Diane?
Yes.
And Paula? And I'm a yes. Okay. Item K, approval of Mendocino County-wide Universal Pre-Kindergarten Implementation Plan.
And so, MCOE realized when the legislation came out this year that we have to have a universal PK plan. Each district was probably not going to have the resources necessary to do this. They took charge and were able to, over several months, gather groups together, make sure that we do the proper consultations and stay within what the intent of the law was, to put in place a plan that includes our preschool program, which is also administered partially through MCOE, our TK program, and also include our community partners in Head Start and say like Imagination Station or other private preschools in the area. So we all were able to get together and consult on it and kind of have some idea of kind of where this is going, and also reassure our private preschool partners that we are not trying to replace them. We're simply trying to expand capacity for our students to have pre-K and TK options
Right.
as we move forward.
Thank you. Any public input?
Have they clarified what credentials needed to teach that? If it's just a associate's degree or if it's an actual bachelor's?
So for TK, it is an it is a bachelor's degree with early childhood hours. However, they're extending the amount of time, and so we're still waiting to see how that's going to work out. Currently, they have at least until next summer to get the hours, but they may extend that one more year just because of the difficulty that we've had with just folks being able to access classes and things.
Okay, that's great.
For preschool, it still stays with an associate's degree with the appropriate number of hours.
Okay.
It'd be great to utilize some high schoolers to do that, pathways to be able to work in early childhood development.
Any other public input? Do I hear a motion for the approval of the Mendocino County-wide Universal Pre-Kindergarten Implementation Plan?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Second? Okay, any discussion?
The plan is short on specifics, but at least it lays out a fairly broad framework for getting the program started.
It does. And we'll have some more specifics as we start to flesh out the budget and things. Essentially for next school year, we're anticipating 2 classrooms serving TK students with the 2 aides, as we mentioned before, serving. That'll take us, we can go up to 48 students with that without having to run any TK-K combo classes or anything like that.
So, Mark will be informed as to what,
It is the one
what
thing
we've
remaining.
done so far, and, because I know that it says that each school district participating in the Mendocino County Joint UPK implementation plan will assess their projected enrollment, classroom workforce capacity, community early learning and care provider capacity, and family community needs to build a district level implementation plan for UTK.
Yes. So I have that sketched out on my board. It's kind of the one remaining thing that's just kind of stayed enshrined there, where we're kind of anticipating all of the enrollment increases in there, what classrooms we're going to need, what all that kind of thing.
Okay.
Is there. So that's there for Mark, and I'll make sure that it's also in writing for him. So.
Okay, great, thank you.
Great, any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, item M, approval of job description, Director of English Learner.
Skip over it, Ellen.
Oh, did I?
Program for.
I'm trying to get through
A
this.
really important one to the coaches, by the way.
Approval of contract with NFHS Network School Broadcast Program.
And so this program is interesting in that they are not going to charge us anything for the cameras, the installation, or the ongoing online maintenance. They do all of those pieces. We have rights to all of the videos they maintain with us. I didn't know that there's a huge group of folks who really enjoy watching high school sports online. So not only will our parents be able to see anybody as a part of this network, it's tune in and say, hey, what's Willits up to at their football game tonight? And so the idea is to install cameras at our stadium and then also in our gym. So any sports events that are happening in either place we can put out there. We can have local advertisers who actually we can have spaces for them to advertise and get revenue for that. We also can, if parents choose to participate in the plan, we will have another way for them to be able to view the sports. This won't be the only way, but if they choose to participate in this network, they can, and we get a certain amount of money for each of the subscriptions. It's not necessarily a motivating factor in this, but it's just another little nice to have in the situation. But I asked and have verified in the contract that we do maintain the rights to our students' images and the videos from that. So.
Will that video feed go into like cafeteria, for example? It would be really nice if we didn't have food in the gymnasium, but they could still enjoy the game from the cafeteria.
That actually wouldn't be really hard to set up.
Yeah.
If it's cloud based, then we could set that up literally anywhere that has Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Since we're kind of all ready to public input, any public input out there?
I asked Mr. Aldridge to look into this just a couple of months ago, and I'm super excited that he did that because I learned about it when the girls went to playoffs for basketball. So, and then I found that network, and I'm like, oh, I can watch the other teams and
Well,
do
thank
some
you for bringing
scouting.
that
But
to us.
anyways, so this is really exciting, and
Much easier to scout that way, huh?
yes.
Yes. Yeah.
And you can, and people who are alumni have gone away to school or whatever, they can watch their favorite team, and it's gonna be really neat.
Great.
So
great.
thank
Any
you.
other public input?
If it's approved, approve it.
Any other public input? None?
How much was the program, or how much is?
We pay nothing.
It's free.
It's free. They get it all through their subscription base. So
Yeah.
we're
Go
paying.
with the subscription.
We only have to pay if we break the contract before 3 or 5 years. I can't remember.
So-
And nobody has to manage it, cause it's all.
Yeah, it follows the game back and
action,
forth. It's, yeah. They're
So,
pretty advanced.
like, if there's like if someone vandalizes one of the cameras, they'll come out and fix it.
You know,
It's
it-
up really high.
I
Doesn't
think it
matter.
would be really hard for somebody to vandalize.
We have cameras up. Actually, you know what? The higher the item, the better their target. It's just it's a challenge. So
I'm not sure, we didn't necessarily cover that, but that's something I can ask the rep before.
Well, maybe you need a camera, security camera that watches it.
you have a 4K camera right here, by the way. You can always use that.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I'm excited about that. I'll make that motion to approve.
Do I hear a second?
Excuse me, go ahead. No. One of us. you want to-
Diane was a second.
Okay.
How about that? Okay, any discussion? Not hearing any. All those that approve?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so it's approved.
Woohoo!
Thank you.
Okay, item M, approval of job description, Director of English Learner Programs.
So as we discussed last month, as I was doing the analysis, I still feel that a director is an appropriate level for this position. However, I would also defer that if I completely understand if you want to defer until you have your new superintendent on board to decide if there are other responsibilities included and if there should be a different job description. As there are 2 omissions in this job description for the English or the extended learning opportunities program that we were discussing earlier and the small schools principal that we had talked about. So if that's a change that you wish to make, I completely understand that, but I was just doing my homework to make sure that I brought forth the job description as was requested around the English learner programs.
So this is just the approval of the job description, not the position itself. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
However, it leaves off the principal and
And the extended
and the
learning
extended
opportunity.
learning.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
So if you want to
Okay.
choose to look at a different type of director position or something like that, that might be appropriate, you know.
But we would have this on the books, but we don't have to use this one
Correct.
if we chose not to.
Correct.
Okay. Any public input on this item?
I had a question if it's gonna be under the admin salaries or under the
It would be under,
teacher bargaining unit.
it would be under an admin salary schedule as a,
Okay.
it would require a, administrative credential and be part of our, administrative ratio there. And just to remind everyone, we did run one administrator less this school year, so our administrative ratio still stays in relation appropriately that way, with that position.
Okay, any other public input? Do I hear a motion to approve the
I
director?
move that we approve with the consideration that maybe we look at the job description under the new superintendent.
Do I hear a
I'll second.
second? We have a second? Okay, board discussion.
I'm curious as to why the salary schedule would be so much more different than the director positions we've had
This
as
is-
of last year.
This is based on our director salary schedule, it's just the amount presented was the absolute worst case scenario of someone sitting at the very top of that schedule, so I didn't wanna present something that was not
And that's
representative
with all
of-
the bennies, right?
with all the benefits and everything, there, so that's, I didn't wanna say, oh, let's sell it to you at this level and then come in and it's higher than that. I wanted to show you what the worst case scenario of that position would be based on our salary schedule as we currently have it. So.
Oh, okay, but generally, I just thought it usually said things like, based on the salary schedule or something like that. I don't see anything here that says that, but, since the paper did, you know, it just sort
Right,
of.
and our salary schedule would have to be approved, and then I did not bring that forward at this
Yeah.
time, because I knew that you may choose to do something different at that point, and,
Okay, any more discussion?
Yeah, this is, we're talking about English learner programs for, again, we're talking about building a program that has been sadly lacking here for the last several years. I think we do ourselves a disservice by not requiring some of these, especially these kinds of programs, to be bilingual. And it says in there that it's recommended but not required. I would argue that we need to make it required.
Yeah, I really believe a lot in that. I mean, that's like asking someone to do a job that requires typing, but hey, they don't type. So, yeah, that concerns me. The level of education is at least good. I'm pleased to see that, and I'm also pleased to see that it requires experience already in doing it. You know, sometimes we have a tendency to skip that stuff.
What is the wording on that right now? Is it strongly
Bilingual
recommended?
Spanish preferred. Well, preferred means,
The last qualification.
yes, the very last. I would have preferred to be 5'8", you know, didn't happen, so that's.
so, I mean, we could always,
Can we modify it now, or do we, Jeannie, your thing said you wanted it so long as we saved it until the next superintendent came?
Well, in terms of actual hiring.
Oh, for the hiring, but not for the approval of the way it's written up. Oh, okay.
you could, provide a motion that provides direction on changing that, if it's just that one factor with bilingual, preferred to bilingual required.
But the rest of it looked good.
Yeah, it's not.
So if you feel that's the only piece, then that's an easy, recommendation to make, and then we can not have to bring it back before we have it on the books, so.
So what
Well,
made the
I'd like
motion
to
have
see
to
it
amend?
faster than slower, so.
Well, can't Paula make a new motion?
Paula knows how, if you
Well,
like.
we have
But we have to take yours back,
we have
don't
two
we?
motions.
I'll
yeah.
take my motion off and let Paula make the motion.
It's a little bit of fuss. Is that the way, I always thought you had to take them back and then,
I'll take it back.
yeah, I know, there's some words is all I know.
Or you can just suggest an amended,
Oh,
motion at this point.
Oh, okay, then I'll just amend Jean's motion, please.
Yes, that's easier.
Okay, that bilingual Spanish is required. Thank you.
And I will second it as amended.
Okay. More discussion?
Yes.
There- Oh, go ahead, Paula.
Just, I know, but
I
I
know,
just need
Paula.
to know the
I should've just said
timeline.
Paula,
Okay,
go
Paula,
ahead.
what else? No. But it's just so that, okay, this gets passed this evening, and so then when does it start becoming effective? That is to go out and hire.
That would
I
be-
know that Mark is gonna do the hiring, okay, I understand that. But the posting, if all the rules are being followed, that I understand, it needs to be in-house for a couple of weeks and then it needs to be out, since half of in-house is gone, you know. I don't know.
For that position, I would think you would put it in and out at the same time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That level of
So
position.
you're thinking and join, I mean, is that the kind of the out that we're gonna count on?
Yeah.
Generally, yeah, that would, for administrative positions, that's,
Usually it's that.
yeah, that's usually a
Okay,
pretty
well, I just
straightforward.
didn't want anything to slow it down.
Before we fly that position though, wouldn't it be appropriate that we look at the ELOP as well as the small schools principals situation? Because we could be painting ourselves into a corner pretty easily, which is gonna have a significant impact on the budget as well. So
To have to rehire or to have additional
hire
hires to take
additional or
those.
whatever, but what it is
Oh,
is.
that's a thought.
So we can certainly approve this job description and put the hiring process on hold until we've had an opportunity to have in-depth discussions with Mark and the rest of the stakeholders as to how best to manage, provide oversight for the small schools and the ELOP changes, the new pre-K stuff. I mean, there's just so many things on the plate right now. And the question really boils down to is, can we do this with one position, or do we need to do this with multiple positions, maybe a director and assistant, or do we need an assistant
Often in the
superintendent?
past, they've used resource
All these sorts of
teachers
things, so.
that speak Spanish to additionally work in these situations, and then you can spread your administrator a little thinner, so to speak, doing another school part-time principal deal or whatever.
I'm concerned about how we're gonna cover the small school administration and ELOP needs.
Yeah, I
They're
don't
big
want
concerns, for
ELL to be watered down any worse than it is.
Okay, any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving this with the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I,
Opposed, aye.
Do you want me to bang my hand and say
No,
it
you're
for
good.
permission to say that? Oops.
Okay,
Robert?
yes.
Do you mind giving us an explanation of why you're against that? I'm just curious.
Oh, no, I said aye.
Oh, start.
No, I said aye. I said aye. No, I was an aye. Okay, item N, approval of resolution 2021-22-12, amend bylaws of Northern California Schools Insurance Group.
So this is our, a pretty standard yearly update that we do for this resolution, so, through our insurance company.
Any public input on this item? None.
This one's a real sleeper.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Second?
Aye.
Okay. Now, any discussion? No discussion. This is a resolution. Alex, how do you vote?
I vote A.
What was that?
Aye.
Jeannie?
I,
Diane?
Aye.
Paula?
Aye.
And I. Okay, it is approved. Item O, approval of MOU between WUSD and Willits Elementary Charter School.
So this MOU doesn't oblige the district to provide anything that we don't already have an obligation to do. With what it provides for Willits Elementary Charter is the opportunity for them to figure out their physical space to expand to serve TK students in the future, but they have to have something on the books that shows that they have some kind of agreement in how that's going to work. We have to serve any TK pre-K student that comes to us, so there's not really a choice.
Right. Okay. Any public input? Not hearing any. Do I hear a motion to approve this MOU?
I move that we approve the memorandum of understanding between Willits Unified and Willits Elementary.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, or any opposed? Okay, let's go on to P. Approval of the MOU between Willits Unified School District and Cal is
Poly.
that is Poly, right, not
Yeah.
Ploy? Humboldt. Okay.
So this is just so that we can have interns and student teachers working with our district program.
Okay, great. Any public input? Not hearing any. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Oh, any discussion?
Is this something we used to do through Dominican?
Yeah.
I see that it's for 22 through 27.
That's good.
The term of this agreement.
Won't see it again next year.
It's kind of awful, each of them are multi-year, so you might see another university that comes up
I
next
see,
year.
okay.
You know, it just kind of depends on when they hit for us.
I get it.
So.
Any more discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? And that's an aye for me also. Okay. Item Q, approval of the MOU between Willits Unified School District and Willits Kids Club.
So this MOU is just our standard annual MOU that we've had with them for a long time. I haven't experienced any issues with anything within the MOU, so I just recommend approval as it's been working for us.
No changes from last year? No changes?
No changes. not
And
that-
any public input? Not hearing any. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I move that we approve the MOU between Willits Unified School District and Willits Kids Club.
And do I hear a second?
A second.
Any discussion?
I just
All-
want to say Willits Kids Club is wonderful. They just do a wonderful job.
I'm wondering if this contract can't be multi-year.
No.
Wait your turn. Yeah, she wanted to be from the public.
Nonprofit, it's a problem.
It's nonprofit, they got to clear their books every year, so it's got to be a yearly thing.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Sure.
And it's also dependent on our funding year to year, because basically they have pass-through funding through us. We applied for it's not 21st century, it's the ACES. They both came out at the same time.
Any other public input? Not hearing any. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, it is approved. That wasn't a no for me, was it, Paul?
The next one, the
Okay,
next one.
Item
Go.
R, discussion, school site safety.
So school safety obviously is a heavy topic and is a big concern for us all. It's one of our primary concerns day to day. I wanted to put on here an opportunity to discuss. I didn't have a particular idea moving forward, other than I think it would be beneficial to form a school safety committee where we specifically invite some of our fire, some of our police, some of those folks onto the committee. I bet that we have parents of some of our students who serve in some of those capacities as well, so who have a very involved piece. The way I've worked with a committee in the past is to literally go site to site, walk, take a look at, especially through the eyes of someone who's trained to say, oh, that's a fire concern. That's that could be a safety concern in this situation or that situation, and sort of put that lens on it, because we don't always see that in the day-to-day. When we're on our sites, we tend to see the classrooms and those spaces, and not necessarily the spaces in between, so to speak. So.
I think the committee is a great idea.
Do we have any public input?
I think it's a great idea to have more eyes on it, and I think that we have a huge liability at Blosser with our fire system, and,
Tell me what happened.
they know, cause I emailed them all. But,
Thank you very much, I appreciate that.
it's a huge liability, and, hopefully nothing happens, at our site. I was 2 classrooms away, and I can't wait to smell smoke and see flames before I get out, my students get out. So something has to be done. And
Thank you.
even the system that was put into place, because it's not working, doesn't work very well. And so that's very concerning, and I'm hoping before we go back in August 2022, it has to be resolved, or we will not be on campus, is my idea of it, or we'll be working somewhere else that there is a fire alarm.
Yeah, in times past, we've had to, at different districts, we've had to have someone on fire watch all the time when you had a defective alarm.
Maybe a guy on a horse that runs
Well,
around and
but he
tell us to
did-
get out, I don't know.
Except for the horse, that's what he did, walked all around
Yeah.
looking, making sure he didn't see any
Yeah.
smoke or
Yeah.
fire.
But you can't hear a lockdown or anything.
No.
And
I
so
mean,
we,
it's terribly scary to be there. And I've been in a room that I could not lock the door from the inside. I couldn't keep it locked. It did get fixed Monday. Dan came, he fixed my front door, not my back door yet. But it's been scary to know that I can't keep my kids safe. And I can't hear it if there's any noise in the classroom. I can't hear nothing.
and so
And we need a fence too along that playground.
we met with, the architect, was that just last week? Gosh, last week was a long week. And spoke with him about the timelines and processes. He said at this point, he was submitting all of the requested information to DSA. It's been in DSA. They have to go back and say, yes, those answers, we agree with that. And then they issue the permit to move forward to be able to advertise and get that process going. I would say we'll probably start off with a fire watch, just because I don't see a way, but I did tell him in that conversation, this is a top priority. If we have to rearrange classrooms or schedules or anything to make this work so that folks can go, they can do their classroom work, that's what we want to do. We want to make that clear. This isn't something that can wait till another break or anything like that. It has to be whenever they can start the work, we need to have them there and do it.
Thank you.
Also, is Blosser not having students this summer?
They are not, so there's,
So there's a way
There's
they can
no
get that
summer
done.
school Blosser.
It's at
There's-
Brookside, and it's going very well. I'm working there.
yes. So it's over at Brookside or at Bechtel. There are no students that'll be on the campus at Blosser for multiple reasons.
This isn't a motion item, but I think it would be good to put a committee together. If you want to start that, Mark, are you okay with following up on that?
I'd be happy to serve on that committee.
You have the background. Okay.
In addition there, I did speak with WPD. They do want to increase presence on campus during high traffic times, just to be more visible and
Good for them.
so they're working on that. Our site administrators have been reviewing plans and will be sure, number one, that all staff are aware of emergency procedures, and number two, that they have feedback if there's something that's missing from the plan or something to that effect. So.
Do we have specific active shooter training for our staff?
We do not at this point. That's something that as still being in Mendocino County, I'd like to see countywide. So I'm bringing that forward to all superintendents to kind of say, hey, we need to do something together because we need to have our police departments, our sheriff's department, all that on board with what that drill is going to be. Because, and there's some systems out there. I'm not advocating for any particular one, but it's just that we have a plan in that situation. So I think that's going to be a bigger discussion for the county as a whole, because I don't think there are many protocols in place necessarily across the county right now.
Okay, now, items for the next regular board agenda.
I have one.
Yes.
I want to know if we can't bring back that discussion that wasn't able to happen on trimesters and semesters. And then I'd also like to know about the just
So
left me.
would Mr. Colvin come in and present on his?
I think on the 21st, unfortunately, he'll be absent with.
I know where he'll be.
You know, you've done this.
As Alex
Well, it
will also
doesn't have to be there.
So I would say at the next.
At a regular,
at the
more
August
regular.
meeting,
August,
yes, would be an appropriate time, or if there has to be a July meeting, that might be an appropriate time as well.
And also to bring up a discussion on having administration back at our board meetings so we can kind of directly have those questions and things like that.
Okay, admin back at board meetings.
Yeah, I think that.
And I'd like, yeah, we could put that on the agenda. Mark, will you be able to have input on that?
Well, if we do it in August, right? Or.
Do we have a July meeting?
Not at this one.
Not a regular.
I'm gonna be out half of July, so.
Well, none of mine are emergencies, I'm just, you
Yeah.
know.
Depending on
maybe-
when they do the budget approval, there may be the need for the 45-day revision.
Yeah, just depending on how that, depending on what that looks like.
Do we have a student representative from the high school being back at the board meeting?
We should again, yes.
Yes, we should.
We cut that out during COVID, I know, because it was just logistics was really hard for our students, but I think that would be, so.
Right. Any other agenda items? Do I hear a motion to?
Never mind.
Paula, stop it.
I will just say it next time.
Paula, if you have something, give it to
I know,
me.
you know those little brain flashes. No, it's just a matter of, also, we need little reports, or I would, in the old days, we had them, of what happens at summer school. You know, like the person who comes in and says, okay, we accomplished these things, and you know, something that sort of lets you know what you just
Yeah,
spent.
that would be
The
nice.
extended
That'd be
class
nice. Or
program.
even if one person reported.
Well, for all of them. that would
Yeah,
be
they
cool.
all gave their little snippet of what went on and what they accomplished, and then it could be reported out by the superintendent.
Oh, okay.
or you want-
Oh, well, I don't have to
Or-
ask you, huh?
or
No.
superintendent.
Brett.
There you go, yeah, would you drop that by?
There are a couple things that are hanging up there for me. One, you may even have quick answers for one or two of them. I sent you an email recently about paving work at Blosser in conjunction with the repaving of Blosser Lane. That might be tied to whether or not the city actually paid for their part of the remediation from the pool.
Unfortunately, they had already gone to bid by the time that I was able to reach out to them, which that would have to be included in the scope of the project for the bid or whatnot.
Well, they do change orders all the
Correct.
time. Do we know if the city has paid us for their part of the remediation?
They have not, so I will reach back out to them around that idea.
I would suggest a change order might be in order.
Might be, so.
And then the other one was, some time ago I asked for information about how hardened our IT system is against things like ransomware and so forth. I'm still interested in finding out, how well we are protected about those sorts of things.
I can speak a little bit on that. In order for anything to get into our system, it has to go through not only our Lightspeed. It's called Lightspeed. It's our filtering system, but county has their own system too, so it has to get through 2 filters. But the best way to get through something like that is to send an email to someone who will open that email and click on a link.
Couldn't that happen with one of our kids, for example, on one of their?
Yes, but here's the thing. Kids are not connected to any of our major systems. Now, if someone like Mark or Joe clicked on something like that, then we might be a little bit more trouble. But the worst thing that's ever happened was the scam email that when you open it up, it sends the email to everyone else in your that's in your address book, which is, if you're a teacher, is literally everyone. But we have ways of getting rid of stuff like that
So
at
how
its
about
core.
redundancy in terms of backups?
So,
I mean, typically the issue is you get nailed by ransomware, they lock everything up, and if you've got good backups, you only lose.
so that is actually if we hosted our own servers for Aries, because that's technically what they're doing is they're holding ransom everything in Aries, like social security numbers for the kids, stuff like that. But we no longer actually host that information. That's now on Aries cloud server.
Exactly, so now the real question becomes,
How, if there, so I would have to ask Jen that. Jen's a lot more connected with Aries.
so anyway, those are that broader spectrum of questions is what I'm interested in getting some feedback on, to determine, you know, how secure are we, not only from the standpoint of just ransomware locally, but ransomware for all the things we happen to have existing out in the cloud.
Yeah, so when it comes to the cloud, Aries is a very respectable company. It's a California mainly SIS system. I assume they have a very secure system. The entire time I've been here, like I've never heard them getting hacked or anything before.
Are you familiar with Telestaff?
No.
Telestaff is a worldwide company that provides scheduling services for fire departments and police departments and cities and so forth.
That was hacked.
They got hammered by ransomware, and good old Novato Fire, the place I retired from,
Yeah.
we're back to using paper from on their scheduling, which was a disaster. Everybody's vacations, everything was
If you would like a more detailed like look at what we have for the school, we could either have something for a board meeting, or you could just come into our offices and we could show you everything that we have.
Yeah.
If we did it at a board meeting, more of us could learn it.
Oh, but then I have to go up and talk.
You'll be good. Don't worry.
You're doing it right now. You can
I'm
bring your
behind the
camera
camera.
up, put it in front of you.
Oh,
while
okay.
you talk.
All right.
I can flip it around.
Compromise.
The insurance company also has been very focused on this topic, and so in the annual review process, they've asked a lot of questions around this. So, it's something I know is on Jen's radar because it comes up in the context of, liability insurance coverage too.
But we just like to know so we know who to blame.
There you go.
I will say if something happens to Aries itself, we do have backups of all the information that we actually need. That information is probably 3 times over on all the other programs that we have.
Thanks, Rich.
It's almost 9 o'clock. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I motion to adjourn.
What's that?
Closed session.
Oh, that's,
We have one other item.
I forgot about that.
So I would like to make a motion, we adjourn to
We
closed session.
shall adjourn to close, I forgot all about that.